There is a terrifying comfort in believing your home is a sanctuary, until something inside decides it wants you trapped there. If you're drawn to documented accounts like this, subscribe now and turn on the notification bell to join the archive, because this file only gets darker from here. Tonight, we open one of the most documented paranormal cases ever recorded, the case of 284 Green Street, the Enfield Poltergeist. It began in 1977 in a plain council house in North London. Nothing about the place looked cursed. Nothing about the Hodgson family looked unusual. Peggy Hodgson was a single mother doing her best to raise 4 children: Margaret, Janet, Johnny, and Billy. Tight money, recent divorce, ordinary stress, ordinary life. Then came the first complaint. Janet and Johnny called out from their bedroom and told their mother their beds were shaking. Peggy brushed it off. Kids say strange things at night. Houses creak. Pipes knock. Everyone went back to bed. Then the next night, the house pushed back. A loud crash came from upstairs. Peggy ran to the bedroom and found her children huddled together, staring at a heavy chest of drawers. As she watched, the dresser slid across the floor on its own toward the door, like it was trying to block the room. Peggy shoved it back. It slid forward again, harder, faster. Then came the knocking. Not random knocking, responsive knocking. It moved through the walls, from ceiling to floor, like something was pacing inside the house itself. The Hodgsons ran next door to their neighbors, the Nottinghams. Vic Nottingham went in to check for an intruder. He found no burglar, no prankster, no broken window. What he did find was a sound that followed him from room to room, heavy, deliberate, intelligent. So the family did the most rational thing possible. They called the police. That is where this case stops sounding like a ghost story and starts reading like a file. A police constable named Carolyn Heaps entered the house and later gave an official statement saying she saw a chair lift and move across the room by itself. She looked for wires. She checked for tricks. She found nothing. The police left with no arrests because there was nothing human to arrest. Once word spread, the house turned into a pressure chamber. A reporter and photographer from a major newspaper arrived expecting a hoax. Instead, they walked into chaos. The photographer, Graham Morris, was struck above the eye by a flying plastic brick. Furniture shifted. Small objects shot across rooms. Marbles dropped out of nowhere and felt strangely hot when picked up. Soon, investigators from the Society for Psychical Research stepped in. Maurice Gross arrived first, grieving his own daughter, but determined to document facts. Then came Guy Lyon Playfair, a seasoned researcher who expected to expose a trick in a matter of days. He stayed more than a year. Together, they built one of the biggest paranormal case files ever assembled. Hundreds of hours of audio, thousands of notes, witness statements from neighbors, journalists, social workers, and police. Water appeared on dry floors. Small fires flared up and died out. Matches ignited without being struck. Tape recorders jammed whenever the activity surged. But again and again, the case circled back to one person, 11-year-old Janet Hodgson. Witnesses said Janet was thrown from bed, pulled across rooms, lifted into the air. Famous photographs show her rising above the mattress, body bent at impossible angles, face frozen in shock. Skeptics said she was jumping, but people in that room insisted they saw something else, something that did not move, like a child playing around. Then the haunting found its voice. At first, the entity answered questions with knocks. 1 knock for no, 2 for yes. Then, months into the case, a voice started speaking through Janet. A deep, rough, elderly male voice that sounded nothing like an 11-year-old girl. It called itself Bill. When asked who he was, the voice said, "I am Bill Wilkins." When asked how he died, it answered with details that were chillingly specific. He said he went blind, suffered a hemorrhage, and died in a chair downstairs. Maurice Gross checked the claim. He tracked down people connected to the house and found that a man named Bill Wilkins had once lived there. The details matched. He had gone blind later in life. He had suffered a hemorrhage, and he had died in his favorite chair, in the same corner the voice described. That is the detail that still haunts this case. If it was all a child's invention, how did she know? Skeptics argued Janet was using ventriloquism. Investigators brought in a voice specialist. Tests were done. Janet spoke while exhausted. She spoke for long stretches. The harsh voice appeared without the damage that kind of strain should cause. Then, in an instant, she would switch back to her normal child's voice. And the house kept getting worse. Visitors described a rotten smell that arrived without warning. Sewage, sulfur, something dead. Cold spots hit rooms so suddenly, people saw their breath. Curtains moved when the windows were shut. On one terrifying night, a curtain twisted tight around Janet's neck and Peggy had to tear it away. The family was breaking under the strain. Neighbors whispered. Reporters camped outside. The children were mocked at school. Their fear became public entertainment. And yes, there were moments of fakery. Janet admitted that she and her sister had staged some small incidents. Skeptics seized on that confession. But even the lead investigators said that children under crushing pressure might fake a few moments of activity. And that still did not explain a police officer seeing a chair move, or a voice knowing how a dead man died, or the mass of events witnessed by independent adults. After roughly 18 months, the violence faded. The knocking grew weaker. The voice went quiet. Life returned, but never completely. The family stayed in the house and the feeling never fully left. That sense of being watched, of sharing space with something patient, something listening. So what happened at Green Street? A spirit of the dead, a force tied to Janet, a mind under pressure, reaching out in ways science still cannot explain. No theory answers everything. That is why Enfield still matters. Not because it gives us certainty, but because it does the opposite. It leaves behind police testimony, recorded voices, eyewitness files, and a question that still refuses to die. What if home is not always the safe place we pretend it is tonight, when your house settles, when the wall gives a quiet knock and boom, when the dark hallway feels 1 degree colder than it should? Remember Enfield, and remember that sometimes something knocks back. If this documented account stayed with you, like the video, subscribe to join the archive and share your own documented encounters in the comments. So after diving deep into the absolute chaos of the last 6 minutes, the flying furniture, the chilling voice of Bill speaking through an 11-year-old girl, and the sheer media frenzy that gripped the UK in 1977, you're probably wondering, what exactly is happening at the Enfield Poltergeist house today? Well, looking at the infamous 284 Green Street right now, my personal take is all about the stark, almost jarring contrast. Because unlike other famous hauntings that turned into tourist traps, the Enfield house just went back to being normal. If you take a trip to North London today and stand outside that semi-detached council house, you won't feel a lingering demonic presence. You won't find a museum, a gift shop, or even a historical plaque on the wall. In fact, after the haunting mysteriously faded in 1979, the mother, Peggy Hodgson, actually continued living in that very house until she passed away in 2003. Since then, a few different families have moved in and out. While one brief tenant did claim to feel a slightly uneasy presence, there hasn't been a single flying chair or demonic voice since the late 70s. Today, the current residents live quiet, private lives. They don't give interviews, and they definitely don't want ghost hunters knocking on their front door. Honestly, from my perspective, that's the most fascinating part of the Enfield case. It shows how the loudest, most documented supernatural event in British history eventually just dissolved back into the mundane reality of everyday suburban life. The poltergeist is long gone, replaced by the everyday noise of London traffic. Enfield remains a legendary chapter in paranormal history, but today, it's just a regular home. Thanks for joining me on this case, and I'll see you in the next mystery.